Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC Abu Dhabi, headlined by Magomed Ankalaev and Bogdan Guskov. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, last weekend we went to this nice place, this beautiful place this time of year. It's called Sweep City, and we swept the board for clients, 5-0 on our client plays last weekend at UFC OKC, and ended up also profiting 12 units of profit for clients. So really a great showing overall, felt great. And also as well, we were on a nice run past 3 of the last 4 events. So we are on a run here. We've got great things to talk about this week. And like I always say, got to put that in the rearview mirror because we've got a lot to discuss and a lot of great events coming up over these next few months. So if you want to become a client, link in the description. I already have a 5% play, money line play locked in for clients. So check that out. Link down below. But with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Magomed Ankalaev and Bogdan Guskov. Now, I've got Ankalaev sitting at minus 560 on the comeback here. We've got Bogdan Guskov at plus 370. Now, you've got Magomed here, who is a high-level striker, but who's very well-rounded. This guy is a southpaw, very slick boxing, very good movement, great footwork overall, a nice counter striker as well, can really pick opponents apart at range and mix it up and mix up the targets on his opponent. Now, he can wrestle, but it is something that we have not really seen him go to very much. The striking has worked out very well for him, but overall over his last 9 UFC fights, he's only landed 5 takedowns. So that's interesting enough that he doesn't really go to it, but also, he has not found that much of success. Even in against Pereira in their first fight, he was like 0 for 10, 0 for 12 on takedowns. But he is coming off a recent loss against Alex Pereira, where Pereira knocked him out in the very first round. That was a 5% winner on Alex Pereira in that spot. Now, you've got Guskov here, who is coming into this fight on short notice, which is a situation where, Khalil Roundtree, was injured, had to withdraw. So it's a short notice replacement for Guskov, but Guskov also was preparing for a fight this coming weekend or the following weekend. So it's not that he was coming really, off the couch or not prepared. He was in the gym. He was preparing. Now you've got Guskov, who is a dangerous power puncher. This is a guy that's really willing to get into the pocket, throw big shots, exchange big shots, and looking for that big hammer to land. He is an aggressive forward pressure fighter, and that's what he's looking to do. He believes in his power, and he's going to come forward. But that, to me, honestly, in this fight is a big issue for him, is because he relies too much on the power. He just is not a very technical striker. He doesn't really set up his combinations very well. I don't think that he really has a process to his striking, and he's going to blitz forward. He's going to throw, and he's just going to look to land those big shots here. And he can be reckless. If he can get into that pocket, he's going to swing big. But that, to me, really sets up perfectly for Ankalaev, where Ankalaev is a very sharp counter striker. He's far cleaner of a striker between these two, and I think he can kind of wait for, the attack of Bogdan and then set up his counters, allow him to really pick Bogdan apart throughout this fight. And I think that's where he's going to find a ton of success, really landing those big shots. But, with that being said, going back, watching tape of Ankalaev, his rise to the title, I have to say, wasn't great. He was getting victories, but just wasn't great. Over his last 5 victories, he beat Thiago Santos, who's on a 1-7 run, including, UFC and PFL, and currently he's getting knocked out in PFL. Anthony Smith, who was on a retirement run and ended up getting the victory on him. He KO'd the glass chin of Johnny Walker. Congratulations. Everyone gets that free t-shirt when they fight him. And also had a razor close fight against Alexander Rakic, 55-53 on significant strikes. They gave it to Magomed, and then he ends up getting a title shot, after that. So, and then he fights Pereira, and Pereira had all accounts had a broken hand going into that fight and still went 5 rounds with him. So, it's a little bit of a concern when you're looking at this price at a minus 560. I think the price is pretty big there. But with that being said, Bogdan, I think the mix of his aggressive style, the short notice fight, he was preparing for 3 rounds next week. And now he's stepping into his first big main event, on short notice, 5-rounder. I think that's a lot to really get over here. Also, if Magomed wants the takedowns, I think they'll be there. But I think the aggressive style here of Bogdan is going to allow the knockout to materialize here. I don't think that Magomed has to hunt him down or find him. I think the pressure will be there. I think the cardio will start to go down of Bogdan, and that's really where Magomed can take over here. So getting off the minus 560 number, give me Magomed Ankalaev by KO at minus 160 to get the job done. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Islam Dulatov. He is minus 1,000 on the comeback here. We've got Wellington Turman. He is plus 560. Now you got Islam, who is an aggressive fighter with a 100% finish rate. This is another guy that's going to step on the gas as soon as the bell rings. He's got a 12-1 record. 11 of his 12 victories do come in that very first round. He's got 7 KOs, 5 submissions, obviously no decisions. And as soon as this fight, bell rings, he is going to come forward. He's going to look to throw. If he lands something big, he's going to be able to follow it up, and he is going to look for that finish. Now, one of the things that we do need to talk about is the fact that he is a full-time model. Now, some of my hair there, some of my mouth there. And that's a concern, right? If he's a full-time model, is he really dedicated to the sport? Is he, there is concerns there. All accounts, I do believe that this is a situation where, I think he's dedicated, and also the fact on top of it is the fact that he's fighting Wellington Turman, who is just at this point, a guy that I really thought was kind of done with MMA. I thought he was retired. I didn't think he was on the UFC roster. The guy hasn't fought in roughly 3 years. So 3 years he hasn't fought, and prior to those 3 years off, he won in an 0-3 run, was knocked out in one of them. His last win, or his last wins, were in 2021, 2022 against Sam Alvey, who had an historic 0-8 run, and everyone was beating him. And then Misha Cirkunov, 1-5 run, and another guy that pretty much everyone was beating. So, he has not really had, the wins that he's had, not great at all. Hasn't fought in a long time here. And really the question is what shape, is Turman going to be in going into this fight? One of the situations is the fact that he's been dealing with injuries. So you got a guy that's, hasn't fought, dealing with injuries. I think it was a knee injury. There's definitely, an issue when you're looking at that part. And also I expect a worse version of him coming into this fight. You can't expect a better version. I think reaction times are going to be slower. You're going to have ring rust. I don't even like seeing guys a year and a half, 2 years out. And now you're talking 2.5, 3 years out. You're just not going to be as good of a fighter, point blank period, in that spot. And I think this lines up perfectly with Islam's, aggressive style, because I think that a guy like Turman, who has been out, who has, probably wants to get his feet wet a little bit, slowly get into the fight. That's not really the way that Islam fights. He's going to come out guns blazing right away. He's going to be moving forward right away. He's going to be looking to throw right away. And I think jumping on him and attacking early and being the far harder hitter is going to find a lot of success here for Dulatov. And I think that altogether, Wellington needs to weather that early storm. I think he probably needs to get some takedowns, grind it out, wear him down, bring a guy that hasn't been, to the second round, has only been a second round once and never been a third round. That's where Wellington kind of needs to bring this fight here. But I don't see that happening. I think the pace, the power is going to be way too much for him. I think he's going to win big time on these exchanges here. And we've even seen that, Wellington can be rocked, wobbled multiple times. He's hittable. He's there to be hit here. And I think that the power is going to melt him here. So give me Islam Dulatov, but give me him by KO inside the first 2 rounds. And that's going to be minus 145. I think that's a strong price here. I think this mostly plays out on the feet, and I think that knockout materialized. So give me Islam Dulatov by KO inside the first 2 rounds at minus 145. And the next one here we're going to be talking about is going to be Magomed Zaynukov. He is minus 340 on the comeback here. We have Damian Rzepecki. He is plus 240. Now you got Magomed, who is a solid striker with very good volume. I mean, this is the guy that was on Dana White's Contender Series, and he landed 235 significant strikes, which is absolutely just off the charts good. I mean, you don't get much better than that when you're talking about just volume. He strings together combinations very well. We'll throw 4 or 5 punch combinations, and he can mix up the targets, bro. He's going to work the body. He's going to work the head. He's going to mix it up, and that a lot of times can really overwhelm opponents because he's a very clean, technical striker. And he is from Team Khabib, which I think is interesting because he's going to be around some top-level guys and training with some of them. While you've got Rzepecki, who is an aggressive fighter, with, a finishing ability. This is another guy that's going to march forward, who's going to throw, who's going to get into your face. And, he's going to hunt for those finishes. And that's something that he's been able to do. He's got a 10-0 record, 4 KOs, 5 by submission here. And he's a guy that is going to come out guns blazing. He's another guy that's also training with top-level guys. He was one of Ilia Topuria's training partners when he fought Justin Gaethje. So he's around some top-level guys, and really both of these guys are. Now, although Magomed is on Team Khabib, you'd expect just a top-level wrestler. I do think that is the biggest weakness here for Magomed kind of coming into this fight. Now, obviously, they can address it. Obviously, they can try to make him better here. But I do think that the advantage in wrestling does go with Rzepecki here. And I think if anyone's having grappling success, it's going to be him in this spot. He has shown, pretty good wrestling, ability for submissions, a solid ground game. And I think those things are going to play out very well for him in his favor because, this is going to be a high-paced fight. Both these guys are going to come out throwing. Both these guys are going to get in each other's faces. And the fact that he has the ability, or Rzepecki has the ability to tuck takedowns behind combinations in a chaotic exchange, I think that helps him very much. He can dictate the pace. He can dictate where this fight goes. If he's comfortable on the feet, he's going to stay there. If he wants to kind of mix it up and kind of break the rhythm a little bit, he can look for those takedowns. And I think the comfort level of on the ground or on the feet is going to play out very well for him in this spot. And I think striking wise, both these guys, again, are going to push a high pace. That's what's going to make this fight exciting. They're both going to push a high pace, but Rzepecki is going to have a large power advantage. I think it's a massive power advantage between these two of what he's going to be able to do here and how he's going to be able to land. He's going to have a 5.5-inch reach advantage here. And he's a southpaw that smoothly, switches stances, gives different looks here. And I think he can leverage, a couple things here. And a guy that's a plus 250 dog, he's going to have the power advantage. He's probably going to have the wrestling advantage. He's going to have the reach advantage. And he's still a big dog here. I obviously would still make Magomed a slight favorite here, but you're giving me a big-time plus money number here and a guy that I do believe has multiple advantages and can get the job done here. And overall, I think this line is wide. And I also think that this line is wide due to the fact that Magomed is, on Team Khabib, that this is in Abu Dhabi, which obviously, that can go with the judges. And, the John Pork meme where he's gained some success where everyone was calling him John Pork, and now he's kind of getting that notoriety here. I think that's why that line is where it is. I think this is the spot here where Rzepecki has the ability to get the takedowns, has the power advantage, and is going to be able to find success here. So give me the big dog here, Damian Rzepecki at plus 250. And the next one you're going to talk about is going to be Sam Patterson. He is minus 460 on the comeback here. We've got Santiago Ponzinibbio, he is plus 320. Now, you've got Patterson here, who was a well-rounded fighter and very big for the division. He's long, he's rangy, he puts straight shots down the middle, nice combinations, fast combinations, and although he's a lanky guy, he's got some power in his hand, and he definitely has finishing ability. Out of his 14 wins, 13 come inside the distance there. And, he's got the power on the feet, but on the mat, he definitely has high-level grappling and a submission threat. While you look at Ponzinibbio here, and, this is a situation where, the guy's on a massive decline. I mean, there's just no other way to put it here. He turns 40 next month, and you can clearly see over the fights that he has had that he is just slowing down, that it's just a big time decline. Obviously, years ago, he had health issues and since that return, he just has not ever really looked the same at all. And he's very hittable in the pocket. And this is a guy that is, always kind of leaned on that sharp striking. And now he kind of still leans on it, but he's there to be hit because he's just not as fast. He's been rocked, wobbled, dropped, and even in wins, he gets hurt a lot. And out of his last 5 UFC fights, he's been either knocked out or dropped in 4 of them. So even in wins, he's still getting hurt pretty badly. And that's a bad sign, I think, in this fight against the guy like Patterson, who's got clean boxing, who's got power, who's got range. I think can cause a lot of problems on the feet. I think at this point, Ponzinibbio is absolutely washed. I think the damage that he has taken throughout his career, especially even recently, I think the MMA mileage is very high. There's health concerns. He's aging out of the sport at this point here. And I think also you got to add in, that his cardio has not looked good. This is, again, we have to expect that, but his cardio does not look good. Where early, again, he can have some nice combinations. He can have a little bit of movement there, but he's just not in his prime anymore. And he's a guy that can get wild, that can get sloppy, can get very reckless, can start to really overthrow shots and wing shots and swing at air. And that's the big problem here, because I think he is going to absolutely struggle cutting distance and getting inside of the distance on Sam Patterson and really land significant strikes, because, Patterson's going to work at range. Patterson, at times doesn't really, really handle the range very well. But if he can stay at range, he's going to pepper out the shots. He's going to have a 3-inch height advantage, a 5-inch reach advantage. I think that Ponzinibbio is going to struggle really cutting that distance. And he's kind of going to be stuck, I think, like in no man's land, where he can't really get inside, kind of stuck on the outside. And, going to be really at the end of the punches of Patterson. Patterson's going to be able to land these big, more damaging shots. And if he looks for takedowns, I think that, clearly, I think Patterson is just way better when you're talking about grappling, definitely a submission threat there. So I think this does play out on the feet. I think that if you've got, Daniel Rodriguez who's got pillow fists, can knock out Ponzinibbio, I do think that Patterson, his boxing, his power, I think he's going to be able to find that big time kill shot here. And I think that's how this plays out. I think that Patterson, the boxing, the striking will all play out on the feet. I think it's going to really struggle for Ponzinibbio. And at this point here, I think Patterson gets the KO. You can't send Patterson by KO plus 125. I like that number here. I think that that's, pretty much going to play out on the feet. And I think he puts Ponzinibbio away. So going to be Sam Patterson by KO plus 125. So there you have it for my plays for UFC Abu Dhabi. If you want to become a client, link in the description. Again, I've got a 5% money line play locked in for clients, as well as one more. And again, we'll probably be around that 5-6 plays come fight night on Saturday. So we are running red hot, feeling good. Visited Sweep City. Let's get back to Sweep City this Saturday. So let's get the job done. See you next week, and let's cash.